Welcome to Rec Talk, live from IHR Manchester. I've got Greg Dunbar with me. Greg, you're the CCO of Hubert AI, right?
I am indeed, yep.
Tell me about Hubert. What do you guys do?
So Hubert is an AI screening agent. So we are helping recruiters find the fastest path to the best talent. And we're really helping recruiters solve what we think is one of the biggest issues in the industry right now, which is kind of this overwhelming volume of applications, but also trying to find the kind of the best talent in amongst that sort of tsunami of applications. And we do that using structured skills-based interviews, AI-powered skills-based interviews, but right at the start of the application journey. So we get that right up front to really kind of qualify the best talent as quickly as possible, which has two benefits. As an obvious benefit to the recruiter, but it also helps to provide a much, much better candidate experience than what all the candidates are experiencing today.
And is that, when you say a better candidate experience, is that for both candidates that are being proceeded with and being rejected out of the process?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
because I think that's the biggest thing, right? In the market we're in at the moment, the volume of applications isn't really the problem, it's the quality of them. But from a candidate perspective, it's the lack of feedback.
Yeah, the candidate experience lack of feedback, and it's ironic actually, because the way I sort of talk about the problem is that this is a structural change that's happened in the industry, and that has there's obviously a cyclical piece here, which is the macroeconomics, right? So that's putting pressure on the whole system. But actually, the bigger issue is that candidates themselves are now using new technology and one-click apply and AI to give themselves, they think, a better chance of getting a job. But ironically, that's having the opposite impact, and it's putting pressure on recruiters. So yes, so recruiters are, unfortunately, ghosting people probably more than ever before, and the process has become probably less human now than it ever has been. But yeah, at the same time, candidates themselves are really struggling to get heard. And so your question was, is that are we improving the experience for people that are rejected? I think that was your question. For people that are rejected as well as people that get through, and that's exactly right. I think too often, and my son's 17, right? So he's just been through this process of applying for jobs, and he's doing either one or two things. He's either using these kind of one-click apply things, and he's just not engaged in the process. He's applying for jobs. He doesn't even know what he's applied for, which is not good. Or he's spending hours, applying in a traditional way, doing a CV and tailoring an application for a job that he's not qualified for. And then he doesn't hear back.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? You can't blame people for going down the one-click apply
route
or using AI to mass apply, right? I know people who have built scripts and Python scripts that will literally just fire out a job application.
Yeah.
Everything that looks partly or remotely similar or suitable, right? And you can't blame them for that, because the reality
Not
is,
at all.
I could spend an hour and a half filling out an application form and then send my CV and a covering letter and all my references and everything, and still not hear back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah,
the crux of the problem is that, right?
Yeah, and I think 99% of recruiters don't go to work, expecting to ghost candidates.
Oh no, it's not an intentional thing. Listen, whether I'm talent acquisition or whether I'm a recruitment agency, I've got a multitude of vacancies and a multitude of candidates applying, right? 200 applications per vacancy that I'm working on. I haven't got time to go through every single one of those people and say no to them all.
Yeah.
And that's where AI should be put in, right? Because actually, if it can say to me, hey, of the 200 applications you've got here, here's the top 20, start here. There might be stuff that we've missed, but start here first, right?
Yeah.
And if you're happy with this 20 long list, we'll auto-reject the other 180 people, but in a personalised manner. Because again, AI can do that. It doesn't have to just be sorry Greg, try again next time. It can be hey, we really like these things on your profile. These are things you're lacking. Please don't let this put you off from applying again.
Yeah.
That's important. Right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So one of the things, one of the concerns I think that people have with AI is it going to dehumanise the process? Is it going to depersonalise the process? It was actually one of the concerns. I've only been in the business for just over a year, actually, and it was one of the things I asked myself when I was joining Hubert. It's obviously got massive benefits to the recruiter, but actually, is this going to depersonalise and dehumanise the process? And actually the opposite is true. The process is already quite dehumanized and depersonalized. People are getting ghosted, they're not hearing back. My son actually was getting either no responses or he was getting letters saying you're not qualified. And actually some of those were not that he wasn't qualified, it's clearly that he just wasn't, he was buried in a 1,000 applications, right? So we are able to give people feedback very, like we're giving candidates feedback within minutes. So an average interview with Hubert is sort of 10 to 15 minutes at the top of the qualification process. So candidates will find out whether they're qualified, not qualified, and they get specific feedback, and it's tailored. So the whole process is personalised, and they can do it 24/7. They can do this in their own time, and we're not trying to replace humans. We're actually trying to make the.
You're empowering these humans.
We want the right candidates to spend more time with the recruiters at the right point in the process. What we're replacing is a very inhuman part of the process. We're replacing application forms, one-click apply, uploading a CV that, let's face it, has probably been done by Gen AI now anyway. CV screening isn't working. That's what we're replacing, and we're replacing it with something a lot more personal.
So that's quite a controversial point though as well, right? In that there's a lot of talk around applicant tracking systems and systems in general auto-rejecting CVs, and therefore hacks are being spread around on how to how to get your CV through the mix and that kind of thing. That's going to be a constant battle, right?
Yep.
Tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think thought number one, I'm afraid to say, is that I think CV screening is dead. So I think, and by that I mean all CV screening. I mean AI CV screening. So any candidate that isn't using Gen AI in their application and their CV now will be in 6 months' time, right? Otherwise, you're going to get left behind. So whether they're kind of exaggerating that, whether it's just an amplification of themselves or they're cheating a little bit, I think is a bit ambiguous. But it is just going to make it even harder to screen people based on what's in their CV. I think the CV will continue to be an important system of record for some jobs, but actually a lot of jobs it's not about the CV. So I think actually we believe there's been a trend towards skills-based hiring for some time, right? So looking at the skills, the behaviours, trying to predict, is someone going to be a good fit for the role, and are they going to be successful in the role? So not just have they got the right experience, but do they want to do this job, and do they fit the requirements of the role? And the only way you can really test that is through interviewing the candidate. But when you've got 1,000 applicants, and by the way, we've got, I'd say now, it's very normal that our customers have hundreds of applicants, but it's not unusual for them to be thousands of applicants, particularly in retail. When you've got that number of applications, it's impossible to engage with every single candidate in that way. And again, that's what AI enables you to do, is to have that structured conversation, take everyone through a fair and consistent process.
So are we talking kind of AI interviews as well?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. That's
cool.
what we do. Yeah.
Because interestingly, I always thought the sentiment around that would be that people don't want to be interviewed by a machine, right? Mm-hmm. But I've had a couple of conversations with businesses based out. That is ridiculous. I've had a couple of conversations with people based out in the States.
Yeah.
And that's all the rage out there now, because
very much so.
When you flip it on its head, you go, hang on, if I'm a retail worker, or if I'm working a stressful 9 to 5, and then I've got the school run and the kids and everything else, I ain't taking time out of my day. I can't ask my boss for a day off.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
So being able to do an AI-led
Sunday
interview
night,
at 11 o'clock when the kids are asleep and
Yep.
it's quiet and I've got no distractions and the dog's down, and that makes sense now.
100%. And so we're predominantly text-based at the moment, and the reason for that is what we see at the application stage of the process. For exactly that reason, actually, people don't. If you start to use video too early in the process, it induces a bit of anxiety. You've got to think, right, I need to be well dressed. I've got to prepare. And actually then the conversion starts to drop because people just don't get round to it. So we predominantly use text-based. It's really simple, it's really intuitive. And what we see is at least 60% of our applications are outside of office hours. I think also to your point, I think attitudes are changing as more and more people are comfortable engaging with tools like ChatGPT. I think if you wound back a couple of years ago, and we've been doing this for like 5 years as a business, right? But we've definitely seen a shift in attitudes in the last 18 months as people have become more familiar with things like Gemini and ChatGPT.
It's become the norm, isn't it?
Yeah, and they trust it more. I think I forget what the stats are. There's some statistics showing a big shift now to people trusting. And it's all about the experience. If the experience is good and you start to build a reputation around that, then actually being able to do it, as you say, 24/7, you know it's consistent, you know it's inherently going to be fair, it's going to ask everyone the same questions. There is definitely now a big shift towards an acceptance, and actually people arguably even preferring that process to the kind of lottery that you might have waiting to talk to a human screener. That's, again, not to take humans out of the loop. Humans have to be in the loop. We don't auto-reject either, by the way. But it's about empowering the humans and enabling them to use their time more effectively.
Tell me about that then. Why don't you auto-reject? Because, I mean, look, I run a recruitment business. I would put jobs out for management accountants or finance managers, and I would get the sandwich artist from the local Subway apply.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be wasting, whether it's credits or time or bandwidth or cloud input or whatever. I don't want to be wasting that on that person being like, oh, so tell me why you think you're good for this forecasting, analysis and budgeting role. Yeah,
I should qualify that then. So actually we do auto-reject. So
you lied.
Yeah, I did lie. I'm sorry about that. No, I half lied. So, no, and I'm thinking about it from an AI perspective. So we're not auto-rejecting the AI analysed questions that we study for a bunch of reasons. So our interviews are built of hard qualifications. So that could be right to work, it could be driver's license, it could be certifications, whatever that is. And they're very binary. There's no AI involved in that assessment. And it's a very black and white decision. And so in those instances, absolutely we auto-reject, and the regulations and ethics, I would say, are fine with that. When we then get into questions around skills, experience, motivations and behaviours, where we're asking open-ended questions in a scientific way, we're analysing that with machine learning, so we're one of the players not using an LLM to do this. It's actually our own proprietary technology that is doing that assessment, and that's very, very important. And so what we're doing, though, is we're then providing the recruiter with a score which can be ranked in their ATS. They can auto-reject in their ATS, but that's a decision. There still will be a human in the loop deciding when they want to auto-reject and on what basis. So we're very careful. The EU AI Act, as you know, is very careful to make sure that there is a human in the loop and that you're not auto-rejecting on anything that isn't very transparent and explainable. I think that's important.
Tell us more about that regulation, because I don't think enough people do know about it.
So it's 144 pages long. If you want to know more about it, I've read 144 pages. I was at the...
page one.
Sorry?
Yeah, page one.
Page one, yeah, exactly. There's a lot in there, but the key things that you need to... I was talking about this actually, if you want to, we can drop a link to me talking specifically about this actually a few months ago. But the key things I would say are transparency and explainability to me, and bias, right? So the data that you use to train the models and the way that you deploy the models has to be demonstrably free of any bias. But it's also got to be explainable, right? So if a candidate wants to challenge the way that they've been assessed or the scores in their assessment, you as an employer, as a recruiter, have to be able to explain the methodology that was used in deriving that score in that assessment. Right, and if you're just dependent, I have to say, unfortunately, a lot of new tools on the market are very dependent on large language models to do this. That is not a very, they are not explainable. It's a black box, and it's not legally defensible. You have to put an awful lot of IP around that for it to become explainable. And so that's what we've done. So we've built methodologies, algorithms, and we've trained it. We used IO psychologists to build these models, and then we've trained it on literally millions of interviews over the last 4 or 5 years.
Amazing, that's brilliant. Any final thoughts, anything you want to leave us with? What's the next thing to look out for? What's the I don't know, maybe what's the next evolution within the hiring process, from an AI perspective?
Wow, that's a big question. Yeah, I think it's going to be refining a lot of what we're doing today, and then I think it's also going to be about recruiters are still trying to work out what's the right kind of framework for me, because it's going to be different for everyone. It's going to be different for different roles as well. So high volume, blue collar against kind of executive search. You're going to be using technology in different ways. So I think it's actually going to be more about what is the right process and what are the right tools and how do I put those tools together. Robert Newry from Arctic Shores is a bit of a hero of mine. I think he talks really well on this subject, and he talks about having a golden thread in the process. So if you're using different tools, using the right tools at the right stage of the process for the right reason, but then making sure that there is a thread that links those tools together so that the candidate is getting a great experience. You're not asking the same questions. There is some consistency in that journey, and it's not a jarring experience going from one tool to another. And I think that's the discussion that we need to have now.
I love that. Appreciate it. Greg, enjoy your day at
Thank you very much. Really looking forward to it.
I'm excited to see more about the products and stuff. We'll pick up off camera and arrange a demo. I'd love to get a demo of it actually. Well, if any of your viewers would like to see a demo, obviously we'd love to. Look, I think another final thought, if I may. I think it's quite a scary time right now in this industry, and I think if we're all honest, I think everyone's probably a little bit scared about this new technology and the impact it's going to have and how to harness it in the right way. And I think that's okay to be scared. For what it's worth, I am an optimist on that. I think we have an opportunity here. There's so much amazing new innovation at this conference even. And I think this is an opportunity for us to solve problems in this industry that have actually been around for a long time. I'm quite excited. I think it's a great time to be in this business. Leave you on a high. It's a great place to finish. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Great to see you. Thank you.